she doesn't know what she's talking about. And to the point where, you know, I earned myself a nickname in the courtroom by some judge that calls me a pit bull. And at first I was like, I don't know if I want to be compared to a, you know, like a mutt. But actually I think that's a compliment, because a pit bull is someone that is not going to stand down and that will go to bat and that will battle for you. So for people who, my advice to people who want to be a lawyer or even a doctor or, you know, a financial advisor or any profession is don't lose sight of your goal. You know, keep your eyes on the prize, because I feel like in today's society, we have it too easy. With technology and everything, we're advancing, but at the same time, we're taking 2 steps back because we're losing our intelligence. I mean, who needs to know how to spell a word? You just talk into your phone and word perfect, you know? And excuse my language, but you can literally sit on your ass in a chair without leaving, touch of a button, groceries being delivered. Not only delivered to your door, there's somehow keyless entry to go in and put your food away in the fridge. And not only groceries, hot meals can be delivered to your door. I found that out when my daughter's like, no need to cook dinner tonight, Mommy, because we're eating on the way. So, I'm like, okay. I mean, it's just so easy. You don't have to do chores.
You're not complaining about that, though, right?
I am in a way, because I don't want them to kind of lose, you know, like the basic necessities of surviving. You know, you put a teenager today in a survival mode, they're like, Siri, what do I do? So, you know, it's just too easy. You have a robot, the Roomba, that can vacuum your house and mop the floor or something. You know, you clap your hands, the light is off. You know, you talk into Comcast and turn on this channel.
That's X1 for anyone.
We have that.
My 6-year-old has mastered it.
It's like, Alexa, turn on this music. Alexa, read me a bedtime story. It's amazing, you know? And when you want to get up off your lazy butt, you hit a button, Uber is right there, you know? It just, so in today's society, and it's just so easy, I feel like the generation, the younger generation today, it's all about me, and instant clarification, that there is a lack of appreciation for hard work. And with that lack of appreciation for hard work, you know, God forbid there's a small bump in the road, however big or small, they're throwing their hands up and says, I can't do it. I'm not going to do this because it's too hard. I can't. And then they detour because life is just so easy for them, you know? So, I mean, what I want to say is don't lose sight. Appreciate the hardships, expect the hardships, you know, overcome the obstacles, because when you do achieve that goal and reach your summit, you're going to look down and see how far you've come, and it's that much more rewarding. And it's worthwhile to do it, because if it's so easy, everybody, you know, will be a millionaire.
Right. And it's actually funny, because I'm going to have to do a follow-up question on that, in terms of people who haven't gone through what we've gone through. What's the advice? So hold that thought for a bit. So Sunny, it's been said that women hold the purse strings in the house.
Yes.
So if there's wealth, that wealth is being managed and controlled by women. So it says.
Yes.
On the other hand, when we look at your field, whether it's finance or wealth management, we see a lot of white men. We don't see as many women that look like us or women in general.
Right.
So tell me, you are in wealth management. You're very successful. Do women make good wealth managers?
Of course.
Why do they? Is it because they control the purse strings? And why, you know, make the case for why we, just as the doctor did, why should we care that women begin to manage wealth? And how can women begin to manage wealth?
Well, those are all great questions. So I'll start off with a story, and then this is sort of a recurring one. So when I'm in client meetings, and if it's a husband and wife scenario, the wife is dragged to these meetings. She does not want to come. She does not want to be there. It's obvious she doesn't want to be there. So I'm telling them about sort of like, you know, their portfolio, sort of some of their expenses that they have, and, you know, projected returns, budgeting, all these things that are very important, you know, very, very important. And I look over at the husband, and he's engaged. He's very interested. He's asking great, thoughtful questions. I look over at the wife, and she's she's not paying attention. And oftentimes I see this and it's very bothersome because, you know, it impacts them as well. I think financial literacy, financial management, wealth management is as important, if not more important for women than it is for men. And there are a lot of reasons why, and it's because, you know, women, we outlive our partners. We're outliving men.
Yes.
Sorry. So,
Not a good one at all.
I love you, babe.
she's gonna outlive you. Sorry. So that's why it's important to you know, make sure that you start investing today. You start taking a closer look at your retirement today, because you need it to last you for a longer time. And the value of compounding is real. It's tremendous. I mean, if you start today, you don't want to look down the road 10 years later and say, shit, I should have started 10 years ago. So women are outliving men. And another thing is, you know, we're the primary caretakers. So we're getting, you know, I don't have any children, but I know many in the room do. We're taking time off from work. And not only, when you're taking time off from work, not only are you not earning a salary, but you're not contributing to your retirement. So not only does it impact you today, but it impacts you in the future. So there's been a number of literacy exams that have been given and to men and to women, and the results are astounding. I mean, it shouldn't be that surprising, but women fail these financial literacy exams. And it's not because we're not smart, we're just not interested. And I think that needs to change today. I mean, it's, you know, we to your point, Susan, you know, we are controlling the bills, we're paying the bills, but why don't we take it a step further and say, okay, like, let me look at the overall picture, let me look at everything, because it's very, very important. There was one other comment I wanted to make. So anyway, so I think to be, and one other thing, so my colleague is here, Rachel Ferraro, so she's an investor on the desk, and she's one of 2 female investors on the desk, and she's very, very bright. The others are men, and extremely bright, but you walk into the office, and it's a sort of like a microcosm of what we see in the financial services industry. Men outnumber women, and it's even harder for women to get their point across. It's not that our points aren't valid or there isn't any merit. It's just my opinion, the facts that I provide isn't as valuable as my male counterpart. And that's very, it's disturbing and it's hard because you have to work even harder to prove yourself and to make sure that your voice is heard. So I highly encourage women to have better control over your finances, ask questions. And research also shows that women are more open to saying, okay, I actually don't understand this. Can you explain this to me? Men don't necessarily do that. Men are just like,
but they don't know.
Right.
They don't necessarily know.
Right. So men don't necessarily do that. So when I think we should be more open about asking questions, being engaged in this conversation, because again, it really is important. It's valuable information. And one other thing. So not only are we, we're working hard. Some of us are taking time off from work to raise our children, but we're also taking care of our parents, especially minority households. We're taking care of our parents. The whole idea of assisted living facilities, that doesn't apply to most of us, my mom would kill me if I put her away, like if I would.
You want to live.
Right.
You want to live.
Yeah, and there's a lot that we do, to your point earlier, that we can't really assign a salary to, right? So we are at home taking care of our kids. How much would we pay for that? If we had to actually put a dollar amount or assign a salary to that, how much are we actually being paid for that? If we're taking care of our parents, if we're doing other activities, it's a lot, and we have to really appreciate, that we can do a lot, but financial management and financial literacy should also be very, very important and up there on your minds.
So we heard a bit in the answers already about unconscious bias. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's unconscious bias is actually a natural thing that happens to human beings because we're inundated with so much data every single day, like millions of data points are hitting our brain every day. And we have to have a way to filter them or we would be paralyzed. The issue is that the filters that we have, as we begin to understand the data that we're receiving, are highly affected by how we were brought up, what we were taught, what we have experienced, and what exposure we've had to different people, for example. And that's where bias becomes an issue because, for example, if I'm a female and I've been brought up in a household where my dad was in charge of everything, all the big decisions, and minimize my role in some of the big decisions because I was a girl and minimize my mother's role, I may grow up and say, you know what, finance, wealth management isn't really something that I know anything about, I'm not good at, I'm going to defer to my husband. Or I may end up not, speaking up in a meeting because maybe my voice isn't as important. So the issue really is, with bias, is what you do with it. What are the actions that come out of that bias, and can we become more conscious of the bias so that we maybe do different things? So we've heard a lot about the bias and how it affects us externally. You've got men treating us a different way, fathers treating us a different way, mothers, rearing us differently to be different types of people than our brothers. But the question I have for the panelist is, has there been a moment where you've said, aha, my unconscious bias has actually affected the way that I behave, that I have now internalized some of that bias, and that I in fact am biased about myself? And how has that shown up?
I'll be the first to go. Because the bias being in an Asian culture and being raised in an Asian family, and back in the day, my parents' marriage was arranged. And of course my mother never had an education, so when she came here, all she did was, in China we had a farm. She worked, she bare children, she had 4 kids. It wasn't like glory, like, wow, I have 4 kids, 2 girls, 2 boys. To her mind, 4 kids, free labor, working in the farm. And that was her way of thinking. And it's not her fault, but she didn't know better. My father had an education, I think, up to 8th grade, and he was able to do some accounting work in the city while my mother stayed home with the 4 kids on the farm. And with that, I feel when we first came to America, she had it in her head. She was going to arrange my marriage. No. And I have an older brother, an older sister, myself, and then a younger brother. Now my sister, she's a doctor actually. She is prim and proper, the typical Asian girl. Sweet, thoughtful, sentimental, quiet. I was a tomboy, rambunctious, rowdy. Everybody thought I was a boy until, well, I'm still trying to develop, but so everybody thought my parents had 3 boys and a girl. So with that, it was a little bit tough to overcome. And also my mom always says that, you really shouldn't speak, it's a man that should be speaking in the room. And it goes back to when our parents said, children should be seen and not heard. And so even as a younger kid, maybe it's the second daughter syndrome, whatever, I always felt like my voice had to be heard. I wanted to be seen, I wanted to be heard. So when she said, you keep that up, you're never going to get married. Never. And I'm like, so that put a fear in me. And then she goes, you know what? It's okay. I have an arranged marriage for you. And I went, no, that's never going to happen. And then she said, yes, this is what you're going to do. You're going to get married at like 20-something, and you're going to have a kid, then you're going to stay home, raise the kids, your husband's going to work. And then I said, Mom, no. 1, we're not in China, we're in America. 2, no way in hell are you going to arrange my marriage, because I will kill him. I will kill him. And then she's like, yeah, whatever. But she had it in her mind she was going to arrange a marriage. And she had it in her mind that I shouldn't be so outspoken because women are not supposed to be like that, especially Asian minority women. So then when I left public accounting, at that time I was making good money and everything, I completely quit. I went to law school. My parents thought I was having a midlife crisis. Why would you leave a safe, steady accounting job and go to law school with no pay? And then my dad said, you're never going to get hired because people don't want to hire females, let alone a Chinese little girl. That's when I was like 4'11". thank God for the heels, because now I'm like 5 foot. You know? but so the bias, it was ingrained in my parents, and then I think not on purpose, but subconsciously,
It got in your head.
yeah, it kind of played with my head and got into my head. But me being me and being so maybe a little bit gung-ho, I refused to let that. So I told my mom, and maybe I took it a little bit further. I said, no, I'm not going to have an arranged marriage, and I'm not going to marry an Asian guy, because I'll be damned if I walk in 2 steps behind my husband. Either you walk next to me or you don't walk with me at all. And it was the same way. And then and when I was in college, I dated one Asian guy. And then he actually said to me, dating you is no different than dating a white girl, other than you look Chinese. Because he said, you're not supposed to talk, you talk way too much. I knew that was over. I mean, my husband's great, because, you know, he lets me talk, and then at the end he just says, and then most of the time.
Yeah.
So for those bias,
Do you want to come up here and defend this? You have definitely been attacked a couple times.
It's not true. He's the best brother-in-law. He's the best
Just
brother-in-law.
kidding, just
But the
kidding.
whole bias thing, it did. It put some fear in me, and as much as I wanted to excel and make them proud, I actually have my doubts, you know. And if like Ritika said, like everybody seems so well put together, but everybody has a story. Everybody has struggles, and you don't know what a person's story is behind closed doors. And going through law school, you know, if I didn't do as well on a test, I'm like, oh my God, my dad's right. I'm not meant for this. Maybe I should just quit and save myself, you know, $100,000. And then I was like, no, I'm not, you know. So it was constant, like an internal battle. And even now, it's still an internal battle.
called
Yes.
imposter syndrome.
Well, you know, and again, you know, there's a lot written on this that women, girls are brought up to be perfect and pretty and put together, and boys are brought up to be rambunctious, and they get dirty and they take risks, and they grow up, and their behavior at the workplace reflects their upbringing without them even realizing.
It's a double standard, you know,
So it does happen. It does happen. It
It's
gets in their head.
definitely, it's always dead, you know. A guy that dates gazillion girls, he's a stud. Everybody, you know, he is popular. A girl that has 2 dates, well, you know.
Yes.
So,
So-
I'll say for me, I think I was really, really fortunate. I have a very atypical Indian family. I think my mom's experience with how her education is what sort of stood by her. Growing up, no matter what, you know, you had to have an education as a woman, because that's what she could rely on when dad was not savvy. And my dad was not a financially savvy guy. Apparently, he spent his entire defense fund on her engagement ring. But he lived life to the fullest, lived in the moment. But so it's because she had her master's that she could go pick up a job, you know, the next day, become a professor and teach and support her family. So it was always important. And for me, I was actually brought up with, you can do whatever your brother can. In fact, you can do it better. There was a celebration when he passed, and for me, it had to be like, in India, you can get an E, which is excellent, pass the A. And if it wasn't an E, it was like, you know, you could have done better. So I was always made to believe that I can do anything I want, and just because I'm a woman doesn't mean I don't have a voice. I was a tomboy like you, rode motorbikes, had my head shaved on one side, 4 earrings. I think some of it was just trying to get attention. Had a lot of Me Too's in my life. Didn't know who to talk to about it, was young. But it also defined who I am today. And my biases, I am very, very conscious of the gender differences that can arise. So I'm almost hyper-vigilant to a degree. And some of it is a function of mom's whip, everything I hear, what I've been through, what I'm looking for, what I absolutely do not want my daughter to ever, ever have to go through. Or at least have the gumption and have the strength to know that she is no less than a man, in fact, better than a man. So my son's all into sports cards these days. There's basketball cards and soccer cards, and, you know, we're getting him to read extra books and he gets cards. And my 4-year-old's fake reading books too and saying, I want a card, I want cards too. And my husband goes, oh, I'll get you an Elsa and Anna card. I almost threw him out of the house. and I was like, why would she need an Elsa and Anna card? And I was like, you know, she likes Elsa and Anna. I said, yeah, but she plays soccer too, you know. And she does dribble the ball, and she's barely 4. And I said, please do not do that. We go to Disney, I refuse to put her in a princess outfit. So I'm almost the other extreme of, I'd rather see her in a Superwoman outfit or get her, she has pretend doctor clothes and, you know, the little doctor kids. But, so I'm to the other degree where I am so conscious of those gender differences and the subconscious way people treat girls differently, or you know, she'll say, oh, I can't wear that because, you know, boys do that. Or I can't do that. I said, no, you can do whatever a boy does. Or we're at Home Depot, and this big burly guy's there with the biggest diamond stud in his ear. And he's walking by, and of course, this is the one time at the top of her voice, she says, why is that boy wearing a earring, Mom? But for me, every single moment is an educational moment, which is an opportunity. So I looked at her and I said, it's not a boy or a girl thing. I said, girls can wear whatever they want and boys can wear it too, and it goes the other way. I said, don't you wear shorts, right? She said, yeah. I said, if a boy wants to wear a earring, he can. If a boy wants to paint his nails, he can. And if a boy wants to wear makeup, he can. I said, so it's not a boy and girl thing, it's who you want to be and how you express yourself. So yeah, Bobby's looking at me like, that's a 3.5-year-old you're talking to. But I feel like somewhere it registers, and even if it's not registering to her, it's very important to me that my son be respectful of women. Know that women can achieve and do anything. His wife, girlfriend, you know, boyfriend, nobody is below you or less than you. And luckily, I think I found the one Asian guy who's amazing. And yes, we walked together. And
I gotta address this. So there is such thing as the stereotype of the Asian male.
But yeah.
And it's not the full picture.
It's not. So I thought it
So I
great.
want to give some props to the Asian men in the audience and the world. How we love you, and we're not going to let
And
stereotypes define you.
Indian men have the same stereotype, and I was married to a disastrous one before. Abusive as can be, you know. I was married for 7 years. I got married when I was 21. I had dated him since 17 and got engaged when I was 19 in med school. It was like natural progression. He was here for education. Let's just get them married. And I came here, and it was the coercion, the control. I couldn't set the temperature of the house to my liking. I was volunteering and trying to make money, and I was taking all my boards again, because you've got to recertify when you come here. And he'd give me $200 a month for spending money. And this guy was a partner in a Big 5. So money was not a problem. He had a double master's. It was all about control, right? And I was like, okay, I'm still going to be in a residency. I'm going to make my own money. It's okay. This is temporary. And even that $200, I could spend it on what I wanted to spend it on. If I went and got an appointment because I wanted a nice haircut, he would belittle me and say how vain I was and I didn't value money and putting me down. But when you're in that, when you're living it, when you're young, you start believing it because you've heard it so many times. And when you're with someone who's manipulative and a psycho or a sociopath, they know how to make you feel like it's all your fault, right? So I was an intern here, and this is after 7 years of being married to this man. My mother told me for 4 years, you need to walk away from this, which for Indian parents is unheard of. You typically get told, you make your bed, you lie in it. And I always said, I used to think you love someone enough, you can get them to love you the way they should love you, right? Young, stupid. And I was in a class for domestic abuse, an intern year of residency, and how to look out for victims, what are signs of abuse. It's not always physical, what signs of emotional abuse, how to counsel. And I had to step out because I had goosebumps. Because here I was, that strong woman, brought up by a strong woman, who had become this birth, that was my life. And I remember, I didn't care what time it was. I did residency in Baltimore. I called my mom and I said, I'm leaving him. And I think it was like 2:30 in the morning in India. And all she said was, you sure you thought through this? I said, yeah, I'm done. So in 3 days, my mom was here in Baltimore. I was packed up. I took my belongings, a mattress, my car, and I left. He cheated us out of all our money. Our joint account had been moved to another account I didn't have access to. I had $500. I luckily found an apartment that allowed me to use a credit card to pay rent. But I knew money was so important to him that this would be a long fight. And to me, I just needed to start. Yes. And I looked at it this way, paid for my green card. So I figured, I needed to cut my losses. I needed to start life afresh. But I also used that, the negativity in the household to excel at work. So I would just spend extra time at work, and I did really well in residency, and I learned a lot. And I remember my program director found out that I moved out, and some of my closest residency friends helped us. And he was like, oh, I'm so glad because I didn't like him. I said, oh, now you're telling me. And he goes, well, we've got a spare room, come live with us. I said, no, I found this luxury apartment building, it's all good. And he goes, Rita, you go north enough, there's luxury trailer homes. That word means nothing, And sure enough, if any one of you knows Baltimore, I was living at an apartment building on Lexington Street in Baltimore City. And I could hear bullets whizzing past at night. But it was, my garage was attached, and the moment I'd be leaving the garage, I'd make sure the car was locked. And I'd be like, that guy's looking at me because he heard me lock the car, now he's really going to shoot me. But, so it was, I grew up really fast, but I had amazing friends, and then the choice was go home as a failure, or stay and make something of myself, and then go back to India if I choose to. And so Philly wanted to teach, came here, and met Bobby at a bar after 2 years, but had to find myself again.
So let me, just because when I keep going on this bias issue, so Sunny, tell us a little bit about your experience with
So
your own.
my upbringings are different from yours, Rita. My mom used to just, put us into, like, boys would do these activities, the girls would do these activities, and I was odd, like an odd child growing up. I was weird. I was also a tomboy, and I wanted to make sure that everything my mom told me I could do or couldn't do, that I did everything the opposite of what she expected of me, which was, very challenging for her. So my mother and I have a very loving relationship, but it's challenging at times, and I'm sure that's not unique to me. So when I went into the workforce, I was once described as demure, and that really set me off. I was like, oh my gosh, not like this is happening. Like, my mom told me that I have to be this demure person, and now the world outside of my mom's home is she's demure. So I did whatever it took to just make sure that I was not being perceived that way, and I was being perceived as a professional. So I would speak up. I challenged myself to be in very uncomfortable situations. And I do that every day. I mean, to your point, Amy, it's just like this internal conflict that you're faced with, and it's just like, what's my natural instinct? Do I respond to this, or like, oh wait, no, the other side of me wants to actually speak up. So like, most times, I think most women do this. We have this internal dialogue, and it's very situational, but I do whatever it takes to make sure that I am challenging these biases, and I am rising above it and continuing to challenge myself.
So being conscious of it and
Right.
trying to act. Okay, so we only have 5 minutes more, and I want a couple questions from the audience, but this is the lightning round. I just want you to answer the following question. Simple question. I am successful because, one sentence. We start with Sun. Giving you no time at all. Lightning round is one sentence.
I am
No commentary.
successful because of my parents.
I am successful because I refuse to back down. As long as there's a ladder to climb, I'm going to climb it.
Not afraid to try something new and put myself out there.
I'm successful because I like to take risks. So with that, I'd like to take a couple questions from the audience because there's been so much rich dialogue here. This has been like, I've been schooled today. Have you all been schooled? Have you all learned a lot? Okay, so let's take a couple questions for the final few minutes that we have from the audience. Any questions? Yes?
So Sunny, I was curious to know when you were telling your story about the husband and wife and giving them their portfolio and all that kind of stuff. Were the people that you spoke to, would you say it's across the board generationally? Like, were they older couples, or would you say that even younger married couples are experiencing, you're noticing that same thing? In other words,
That's
is
a
there a
great-
shift?
Yeah,
in
it's a-
kind of
It's a great question. So the older clients, there was this setup where the woman was given an allowance, so sort of similar to what you're describing. So they were placed in this role where you are not allowed to, not that they're not allowed to, but because they were placed in a situation where, okay, I've given an allowance, so therefore I know how much I have. Anything beyond that, I'm not interested in. And again, to my point earlier, it's not that we're not right and that we're not interested. I think sometimes we're placed in this situation. With younger couples, it's the reverse. It's not so much a reverse, but it's more of an equal playing field. So the women are equally as willful. They're successful, sometimes more successful than their counterparts or their husbands. So it's different depending on the age group.
Thank you.
Yes?
I have a question for really anybody on the panel. We spoke a little bit about microaggressions, sometimes conscious, sometimes subconscious on the part of our male counterparts. Can you guys share a little bit about when you experienced that on the part of female counterparts as well? Because none of us are immune to the information and the biases that we're getting, but all of us need to be aware that we might be adopting some of the ways of thinking that some of our male counterparts might have about other women. So any stories that you might be able to share and how have you handled those situations?
So the question is around, have we experienced microaggressions from, for example, females? So microaggressions from ourselves, because they're not just about microaggressions from males or from people not like us. It could be that we have them as well. Is that it?
Yes.
Okay.
I have, because I think by my profession, go from male and female, and sometimes I have to say I get it worse from females. Us as females, I think, are way too critical, way too judgmental of each other, and way too competitive. For if you take a step back, it's very petty. You know, you can look at someone and say, I don't like them because they're pretty, they're skinny, they're smart, whatever the reason is. I think we are raised, or maybe society turn us against each other. It's always trying to one up on each other. So, and being in a courtroom where litigating a case when there's an older attorney, female, I feel like she is a raging bitch, and she has like a chip on her shoulder, and she is out to get me and attack me for unnecessary. You know, she could turn over the documents, but instead of doing that, she makes me jump through hoops and call a judge in order to get that, all to kind of exert her authority and her seniority over me. So I do get it worse from female attorneys and sometimes female judges, because. And then on the flip side, I think they have it worse from their counterparts. So then it just kind of filters down. And I think for us to get over that is there needs to be change. You know, there needs to be a voice. And the more voices that join in, the stronger we are. And the stronger we are, the more we move up in numbers as females, it will eventually trickle
Well,
down.
I think some of that comes, I think a lot of that comes from the fact that if you're a minority and a woman, you think there's one slot that all of us have to compete for. Of the 100 slots, we get one. And the sense is that I'm going to be that one. And you're not going to be that one. So it is, right? It's a lot about scarcity and the perception that there is not enough, there's no more pieces of the pie. We only have one piece. And so you're right. We need to change that by making more seats at the table as opposed to having us compete for one. And that comes from power and people who are making those decisions. So let's take another question. All right.
Not our ones.
So if there aren't any, I want to thank the panelists for a couple things, a couple takeaways. The first is that there is a deep well that we all live in, that we come from, and our experiences as people have highly influenced us. Number two, that there's bias in the world and around us, both externally focused on us as well as internalized, and that we need to face that and address that proactively. And number three, that despite our hardships and our difficulties, the will to succeed, the motivation to make it, that has come from who we are, has been the way that these women have been so successful. So I want us all to thank the panelists for an amazing
That's all right, I got it.